All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm your host, Wade Swikle, and today's guest has a truly inspirational, life-changing story. I was fortunate enough to see him speak live on stage at the Home Service Freedom event. And today we have Sean Michael Crane. He's the founder of Unstoppable 365 MFR. He is a speaker and author, and he is on a mission to change people's lives and how they do things. He spent 2,000 days in prison changing his own life, and now he's out to help others do the same. Sean, thank you so much for coming on to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm really excited to have you on and to really just hear your story. I mean, you don't hear from a lot of people that have been able to achieve success after spending several years in prison. And I've heard your story a couple times, but I hear something new every time I listen to it. And I'm excited for you to kind of just share what you went through, why you went through it, and what you were able to take away that you're now applying to help other people out that might be in tough situations.
Yeah, man. I mean, I appreciate you having me here. And my biggest passion and the thing that drives me every day is reaching as many people as I can with my message because before I'm a spoiler alert, I went to prison, right? And it changed my life. You shared it in the intro, and I'll talk about that right now. But before I went to prison, I felt like I was just drifting through life without any control, any focus or purpose. And that's the worst feeling in the world when you wake up in the morning and you're not excited about your life. You don't feel like you have a purpose or a vision or goals. And my life was just miserable at that time, man. So I've been able to change a lot of things as far as my mindset, my habits, tapping in on a deeper level to my spirituality. And so I'm on a mission to share with people how I did that and really what happened to me in prison that helped me to make these changes. And two things. I want to really get clear on what success is, because I think a lot of people in our country and in the modern world define success as net worth, money, cars, material items. And there's a lot of guys out there that I see on social media at these events who have a lot of money, who have a lot of stuff, but they're fat and out of shape. Their relationships aren't thriving. And in my eyes, those guys are not even close to being successful. So I want to redefine what success is. Success is having ultimate control over yourself, self-mastery, your thoughts, your daily actions. You don't have impulse control problems. You don't abuse substances. You're in complete control of yourself. When you do that, you create this internal state of harmony, this inner peace, this self-love that is invaluable, right? And we heard Tommy talk about self-love and why that's so important for business owners and people, right? So that's the first thing. And that includes, from a business standpoint, creating success with finance, but also in your health, in your fitness, and especially in your relationships at home. So my thing is I want to have it all. I want to be the best version of myself so all these areas of my life thrive. And then number two, just raising the standards for people's expectations in our country, especially men. I think a lot of men just find themselves feeling lost and broken right now, to be honest with you. And you see the obesity rates rising. I mean, 40% of men are considered obese. You see the, abuse with drugs and alcohol rising, divorce rates rising. And I just talk to a lot of men every day who are not happy. And I believe if we collectively raise our standards, we can inspire a lot of people to do the same and really save people's lives. So that's my mission. That's why I started Unstoppable, this brand right here, because I want to raise the standards of the men that I coach and work with. So there's a ripple effect that spreads throughout our country and throughout our world.
I love that. I love that. And I think what you're doing is extremely important because, we are seeing this. It's almost like an epidemic. We just came out of a pandemic, and I feel like we have this epidemic of people that, are just, they're not taking life by the horns and, and getting after it. I've been hearing recent studies that the current testosterone rate for, 25-year-old man is the same thing as it was for a 60-year-old man back in 2000. And, why do you think that is? What is causing, this weakening of the American culture?
I mean, that statistic right there is alarming. Here's another one for you, and then I want to answer that question. One in every 25,000 men have abs that you can see that aren't covered by body fat. One in every 25,000 men. And so if you have body fat that's covering your muscle, you know, what leads to that? A lot of bad decisions, a lot of impulse control issues, a lot of pleasure seeking behaviors, right? So that's a symptom of what we're talking about. when you eat that garbage food that McDonald's serves and all these fast food places, it affects your mental health, it affects your hormones. And if you're walking around with that much body fat at a young age, like all these kids are, it suppresses testosterone. It has a very adverse effect on your body's natural production of testosterone. So more people are sitting around than ever before. They're idle. They're on their phones. They're sitting at work. They're less active. Then they're putting all this horrible food in their body that's having an adverse effect on their natural hormonal, fluctuations. And that also affects mental health. More people nowadays are battling with all these new symptoms and these new things that have emerged that people hundreds of years ago didn't suffer from. Because when you have a purpose, like when you have to get up and let's say you owned a farm back in the day, you have to tend to the livestock, you have to go make sure wolves didn't kill your goats, you have to go work on your crops. Like you have something to focus on that gives you direction, right? And when you're doing that every day, you have this like purpose. So on a spiritual level, your spirit is alive. You feel alive. I think nowadays, a lot of people don't have anything to do. They work a job they hate. They're just going through the motions. They're passing time. They're trying to escape. So I think it's a really big issue right now. But I think the main reason for the suppressed testosterone levels in young people is the food they're consuming. The pesticides that we spray crops with is really bad. Like you should only eat organic food, and if you can, you should only grow your own vegetables. You should never eat processed food because they're adding a bunch of soy, and soy is going to reduce testosterone levels. Gosh, the list goes on and on, but it's really the environment and the pollutants that we're putting into our food, into our environment that I believe are leading to those suppressed testosterone levels. It's that in combination with a really easy life. So here in America, we have the easiest lives of anybody that's ever existed on planet Earth. Like in modern countries, right? You could really just get up and do nothing all day and collect unemployment and have an EBT card and get groceries at the store and live on your mom and dad's couch and just be a loser your whole life. When you do that, it's so miserable, man. Like it's like hell on earth, right? I'd rather be like I was in prison, just attacking my day every day, working out, reading, writing, and deprived of all this shit out here, than I would to have everything out here and to be stuck in that internal prison. Because if you're not doing things daily that make you feel proud of who you are and really testing yourself and pushing yourself, you're never going to really tap into those powerful emotions that we can experience internally. And if you never are able to tap into that true inner peace, that gratitude, that self love at a high level, then your life is not going to feel that exciting and you're not going to be as happy as you want to be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Tell me about your transition. I mean, were you ambitious like this at an early age, to really take care of yourself, or was this something that you learned during the journey, through the legal troubles and the legal system, that you were able to take into the real world? I want to hear, one to one, like walk me through that whole journey and that transition.
Yeah. So I remember at a very young age as a kid, I loved sports and I felt something inside of me that told me I could be really great in life. I did good in sports. I picked up surfing at a young age. I love to surf. I'm here in Southern California. And I was always good at making friends and being social. So from a young age, I had a lot of friends. I was doing good in sports. I felt really capable of my abilities to do something amazing in life. But then my whole world went dark, man. At a young age, I started seeing my parents fighting. They would be drinking. I started realizing they were doing drugs as well. And then, I saw my mom overdose for the first time at 10 years old. And it scarred me for life. I mean, I literally walked into the room and my uncle and my dad are trying to do CPR on her and she's dead on the floor in front of me. And that experience, man, it scarred me. I don't know how else to say it, but it introduced me to the dark aspects of this world and the more sinister things that I was naive to growing up. And so there was a series of events like that from 10 to 14. And then it culminated in both my parents basically leaving us at 14. My dad was sent to prison. He had a gun at home. He had a standoff with the cops in front of us. And I thought he was going to be killed right in front of us. And he surrendered. They took him to jail and he ended up going to state prison. But then when he was in prison, my mom became completely unraveled. Her addiction just took hold of her and she stopped coming home. She stopped coming home. She stopped taking care of me and my siblings. And so I lost both my parents. And at that time, man, I just really felt like my whole world was turned upside down. And it went from being hopeful and still optimistic to completely dark, no hope, no chance. It was just complete misery. And at that time, I started using drugs and alcohol to numb out the pain I was feeling. So from 14 to 23, I was just going through the motions in life. I was just like a leaf drifting in the breeze, man. I would just, I had no direction, no goals, no ambition. And I was also angry and bitter. So I would drink and I would get in fights at parties. I was getting in trouble at school. I was hanging out with the wrong kids. And I was just so broken inside, man. I didn't know what to do. And then, ironically, prison saved my life. If I didn't go to prison, I'd probably be dead or just really miserable. And I can't even fathom what I would be like if I didn't go to prison. I'm pretty damn sure I'd be dead because I would take so much pills and me and my friends would do drugs and drink and party all night and chase girls. And I saw a lot of those same kids die. We didn't know what we were doing, experimenting with all these pills and drugs. So they would get drunk and take pills and we'd be out partying. And then the next day you'd find out so and so didn't wake up, like he's dead. And I lost family members, friends, so many people growing up that I was next in line. And I can't believe I didn't die because I was the worst out of all of them. I would take more drugs and pills and alcohol than all those guys. And so I feel like God spared me for whatever reason. God intervened in my life and sent me to prison. And then it was a challenge. And it was like, how am I going to respond to this challenge? Am I going to get worse and go down that same path even more? Or am I going to see that this is like a divine intervention, a moment where I can change. And I used it that way, man. So prison gave me the opportunity to really tap back into that person that I wanted to be my whole life.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, you went in at a young age. You had your whole life ahead of you. Obviously, you were hanging out with the wrong crowds. Going down this path. When did the wake up call come? What was that experience like in the beginning? Like, and then when did the lights turn on? I
Yeah,
guess.
so initially it was terrifying. I was charged with attempted murder that I didn't do. I was at a party and these guys started fighting. I was watching the fight and I was drunk, so I was really close, like too close to the fight. I was an idiot, and I got jumped and brought into the brawl, and I was fighting, defending myself, wrestling around with these guys, and I didn't know that there was people being stabbed in the midst of that. So I had blood all over me. I was seeing wrestling and fighting with guys who were stabbed, and so the police report made me look guilty. I mean, I looked like the assailant, and they arrested me the next day and charged me with attempted murder. And I remember I was just in such shock and awe that first month. I couldn't make sense of anything. And then as the drugs started to wear out of my system and reality started to set in, I was terrified. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And like, you know, in that moment, I'm in jail with 20 or 30 other guys who are facing life sentences, lengthy sentences. Some guys are just in there for short periods of time, but we all have something in common, and that's we're still with the same mindset of like using drugs to escape from our problems, being in denial, putting up a facade of who we truly are. Because most people in that environment don't want to be that way, but it's learned behavior. It's what they did to cope and survive over time. And so I started getting high with those guys in jail because I wanted to numb out the thought of going to prison for the rest of my life. So we're taking pills, we're drinking jailhouse wine. And I remember I got in a couple fights in jail, and one of them, the district attorney actually like picked up charges on me. They dismissed them, but it was just an assault charge. But I remember sitting there in isolation. They put me back into an isolation cell by myself, and I was coming off of all these drugs and all this stuff that I'd been doing for that first couple months. And I just had this moment where I looked in the mirror and I had this awakening, this aha moment where I thought to myself, Sean, what are you doing, man? You're doing the same stuff in here as you were doing out there. You're doing the same exact stuff. You don't want to be this person, and you're still using drugs. You're fighting. What the hell are you doing, man? And something in me just clicked, and I realized it wasn't even about getting out of prison or being exonerated for the crime. It wasn't about anything other than me at the core of my being, tapping back into my true character and my authentic self. I had to do that for me. I was so disappointed when I looked in the mirror and I saw the way I looked and how I was behaving. And in that moment, I just made a promise that I was going to be my real self for the rest of my life. I was going to be that kid that used to love sports and the kid that I knew in my heart I was meant to be, and that I was going to be sober for the rest of my life. And I committed to those two promises right then and there, and I never looked back. And that was the turning point for me. For the first time in many years, I wanted to do good. I wanted to be a good person. I was never a bad person, but I made a lot of bad choices and hung out with a lot of bad people. And in that moment, I made a promise that I wanted to be a really good person and I wanted to, do good in my life. And so it was just that internal commitment that changed everything for me.
That's powerful stuff, man. I can only imagine. That's something that, I think, it's a deep dark fear of somebody to be locked up. But I remember you talking at the conference, like in prison you started waking up, working out, reading, writing all day every day. Did that just all happen in one day, or was that some sort of, gradual build over time? Like what did that do for you?
Yeah, so I became more consistent and disciplined in prison than I ever was before. And here's the thing. In my eyes, I had no choice. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But most people's biggest problem out here is like they could skip the gym today and they could not do the things they say they're going to do, and everything's going to be okay. At the end of the day, they still have a house to live in, their family to go home to. They still got money in their bank account. So the pain threshold isn't great enough for most people to change. That's why people change when suddenly they look in the mirror and realize they're 200 pounds overweight, or they get a DUI, or they go to the doctor and find out that they have some form of cancer. Then they're going to change. They're very quickly, they will change their behavior because the pain threshold has been met, right? So for me in jail, I started doing these things daily, like working out, reading, and writing, because it helped me to stay present in the moment and not think about the what ifs. Like, how long am I going to spend in prison? What if no one helps me? What if no one believes me? Like, those thoughts were ruining me in jail. And so I started doing things every day initially just to keep myself busy and occupied. But then what I realized very quickly is every day when I'd get up and push through an intense workout, and then I'd immerse myself in a book, or I'd practice my writing and write like a short story or letters back home, my days would pass me pretty effortlessly. And I didn't have a lot of negative thoughts or feelings in the midst of those activities. And so I realized like that those daily actions gave me salvation from myself and from my own negative thoughts or interpretations about what could be. So every day I just started doing those things. And in a very short period of time, I felt this shift internally, man. Like I couldn't believe that I was feeling so much inner peace in jail facing life in prison. I was looking in the mirror and I wasn't no longer feeling ashamed of myself. I started to look in the mirror and feel proud of that guy. I was like, damn, that guy just worked out 30 days straight. Like I could do 1,000 burpees right now. That guy just read 20 books. That guy, like, I started to love myself for the first time since I was a kid. And it blew my mind because we always think that we need to make it. We need to be a millionaire. We need all this stuff, right? We see these things growing up and we think that's what we need to be happy or successful. But we don't, man. We don't at all. For me, it was just being honest with myself and being willing to take those daily actions. And I started to feel amazing, man. I couldn't believe it. And so my sole purpose from that moment forward became keeping that energy alive. Like I felt the best I ever had in my life. And I was so scared I was going to wake up one day and lose that feeling inside of me. So every day I just continued to do those things. And that just became who I was and how I lived from that moment.
Yeah, that's tough, man, because like you're surrounded with all of these other criminals that, are still doing all the same stuff they were doing beforehand. And, I always like to say part of the reason we do our moving time retreats is because I believe that who you spend your time with is ultimately who you become. And you're now in a cell spending your time around all these other people doing all these negative things, or who have done negative things, have a bad attitude. I mean, how do you overcome that? If you're stuck in a group, whether you're in prison or not, and you're surrounded by people that, it could be family members, could be childhood friends, could be coworkers, whatever the case, how do you lift yourself above that circle of influence?
Yeah, so people always say like you're the sum of the five people you spend your time with, right? Like if you hang around
Yeah.
five successful people, you'll be the sixth. Or that's true and it's not true. So for me, when I made those promises to myself, they were not negotiable. Like they weren't just commitments that I could break. Like I had to be that person no matter what. I would die before I stopped being that guy. Like that's the level of commitment I made to myself. So it took me about a year to really build up complete confidence and belief in myself. A year of those daily actions. And fortunate for me, for that year, most of the time I was locked down in a two-man cell. So I just had one other person that I had to deal with versus a whole dorm of guys. So it was me and my cellmate. And most times, like guys in jail, they do want to work out. They want to be productive as far as keeping their days structured because it helps pass the time. So I didn't have any drug addicts or any like really bad people that I was celled up with at that time. One of them was an older guy who was facing life in prison. The other one was a younger guy, and we would work out together. And he actually wanted to change his life too. He was just struggling a little bit. So I didn't have the temptation initially or the negative influences around me. But even if I did, I wouldn't have broken. I'll tell you that, because I was so determined. I looked at it as life or death. So by the time I got to a prison where I was around more people and you could go out on the yard or you're out in the day room, I would not go around the guys who I knew were going to get in trouble and were doing drugs. I would be respectful, but I wouldn't spend time with them. And I really limited my conversations with people. As soon as people started talking about fight stories and drugs and all this nonsense, I would just change the conversation or I'd move away from them. And I hung out with guys, we'd play chess, we'd read books, we'd work out. And I was just, and for me, being around those guys and seeing the way that most of them operated every day was the best thing for me, because it was a constant reminder of what was at stake if I didn't stay focused and disciplined. Because I saw all my uncles and my dad and people in my family go to prison and end up like those guys who are 10 and 20 years older than me. You know, the guys covered in tattoos who still want to try to act tough and cool, who are just losers. They're losers, man. So in jail, they glorify that stuff. But out here, we call them, you know, degenerates or losers. And they're not all bad people. Some of them are actually good people who just are broken and don't know how to change. But for me, it was a reminder of, hey, you don't want to be like any of those guys. You know who you want to be. That's a reminder of what not to be like. So when I'd see them doing certain things, I always would do the opposite of what I saw them doing. I'd always be reading when they were at the card table playing cards and gambling. Like I'd be working out early in the morning while they were sleeping. I would just do things differently than them. And it was actually good to see how they were living, because it gave me awareness. Like, I don't want to be like that. I'm going to work harder and I'm going to stay more focused.
Hmm. Yeah, you were intentional with who you surrounded yourself with. I mean, that is something that, you were in a tough situation where I can't imagine, being harder. I guess my question is it was it harder to be intentional about choosing who you surrounded with when you were in prison and more of a confined environment, or was it harder once you got out and now all of a sudden, you have these probably same contacts that you were rolling with before you got sent away. What was more difficult, that time in there, the time when you got out and you had to re-choose your intentions and break your routine that you had probably gotten used to for so long?
Yeah, I mean, there's always challenges in different environments. To be honest, for me, it was really easy to live the way I was and be who I wanted to be once I made the decision that that was my path, and nothing was going to deter me from that path. It was easy, and I really think that strong-minded people can accomplish anything if they put their mind to it. Weak-minded people are easily influenced and persuaded, whether it's out here in prison. There's a lot of weak-minded people in prison that get persuaded to do really bad things, not because they want to, but because they're followers and they're weak minded. So for me in there, I was very intentional with how I lived. And here's the thing, I believe like the energy we're putting out and the way that we carry ourselves attracts a certain type of person towards us. So if I was acting like a knucklehead, talking shit to the cops, or if I was getting high, I would have attracted those types of guys towards me. But people saw me reading every day. They saw me working out every day. They saw how disciplined I was. So when they would approach me, they'd ask me what book I was reading or what workouts am I doing? Because that's what I was representing. You know what I mean? So the same goes for out here. When I came home, none of my old friends wanted to hang out with me. They can't work out the way I do, right? They don't read books. Like they weren't focused on personal development. They were doing the same stuff. And some of them had changed for the better. But, I've seen them since I've come home, and I'll make small talk, but they noticed the change in me to the point where they didn't even want to hang out with me anymore. Like I'm not even the same guy. And I get a lot of respect from most of the people here in my hometown. I know some people are probably like, oh, Sean changed. But most of the time I get people messaging me saying, dude, I'm proud of you. Like, keep going. Like, damn, you're inspiring me, man. Like, and some of those guys have ended up joining my program or reaching out to me for help. And I was so committed when I came home that I was willing to cut off my own family. I told my dad in a letter before I came home, who was my best friend in my life, who actually like we were more like friends than father son at one point, and I used to party with him. We worked together. He was my best friend though. I loved him more than anyone else in this earth because we were so close. But I told him, I said, hey, it's not going to be the same when I come home. And I'm not going to be around you or so and so if you guys can't respect my decision as to how I'm going to live my life and who I'm going to be. And they all respected it. I told the people that I knew were going to not be the best influences for me that I'm changing my life and I love you guys, but I'm not going to hang out like I used to. And for me, it was literally life or death. Like I almost lost my life. I got a second chance. What an idiot I would have been to not learn the lesson, right? And I feel like I would have been punished if I didn't learn the lesson. Here's the thing. I feel like God put me in prison and gave me a second chance at life. And every lesson that I learned or every understanding that I developed about the things I did wrong the first time, I could not go back and make those same mistakes. I feel like I would have been punished and I wouldn't be here today achieving the level of success I have if I made those same mistakes. I had to do everything the right way from that point forward. So I did. I mean, I've been sober 12 years. You know, I treat my wife and my children the best I ever could. Like here in the past, I wasn't the best boyfriend for my girlfriends, you know, and I learned through heartbreak and mistakes that I made. And I remember in jail making a promise to myself as well, like the next woman that I get to fall in love with and share my life with, I'm going to treat her like a queen. I'm never going to do her wrong. I'm always going to be the man that she needs. So like I learned all these things through pain, through trial and error, through my mistakes that I've been now able to correct and remedy since coming home.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in the moving industry, they've had similar struggles. I know firsthand, friends of mine now that own successful moving companies, they spent time in jail or prison. They struggled with substance abuse issues, and they were all able to make a comeback. They figured it out one day. It may not have been as dramatic of a story that as what you have, but something clicked, and they started to rally back and get momentum and come back. Tell me about your comeback. Like what steps did you take to start to grow a personal brand? You have a book, Prison of Your Own. What did you do to start to build back your life and become a success story? Like what step by step?
Yeah, you know, it's amazing looking back on the story. It's a combination of like the right timing. Some people might call it luck, and then just a very relentless and driven mindset. You know, so when I came home, I was staying in a trailer on my aunt uncle's property, and I had $200. And I started doing some work with my uncle who owns a tree service here in town, and I hated it every day because I had done that job when I was younger. And I just wanted to come home and I wanted to have everything different. You know, I had this vision of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to make an impact on this world. I wanted to speak, I wanted to coach. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And so for those first 2 months, every day I was at that job was like torture. And I just realized I had to find a way to get out of there before more months passed. And then all of a sudden it became comfortable. And then all of a sudden that's what I was doing. You know, that was like my greatest fear. And so I found an old contact who was doing personal training, and he offered to let me train with him and his clients. And I got certified and did everything I had to do in a very short period of time to be able to work with him. But then I had all these challenges, man. So there was these wildfires that broke out in Santa Barbara County that year, and they were really bad. I mean, roads were shut down, homes were burnt down. My uncle almost lost his home, and then these rainstorms came through and caused mudslides. So the US 101 North was shut down. All the roads out of this small town I was staying at were shut down, and I actually found a way to get into Santa Barbara via airplane, right? I told this story on the stage last week. Like I went through my contacts and found a friend who had done sunset tours. He used to go and take people up at sunset and fly them around to see the sunset in Santa Barbara. And I was just on such a mission, man. Like I would not be denied. You know, I'm going through all my contacts. I'm gonna find a way. And this is how delusional I was in a sense. I'm like, let me call this guy and see if he can fly me into Santa Barbara. Right? Like what the heck? Most people would have just waited till the mudslides cleared. But I couldn't wait, man. I knew that this was my chance and I had to make it happen. And so I got him on the phone and he was actually shuttling people back and forth over the mudslides into Santa Barbara because nobody could make it to work, and he knew a lot of successful people that needed to be in their businesses. And I went down there with all my possessions. I had a duffel bag with all my clothes. I had like $800 or $700 I had saved up with me, and nothing else. And I just left with him into Santa Barbara. And I remember on the plane ride, you know, into Santa Barbara, he looks over at me and he's like, all right, man. So like when we get there, where are you staying? Like, what do you got going on? And like, I don't have anywhere to stay, Nick. I just know that I'm going to secure this job and I'm going to go from there, man. And he's like, wait, what do you mean? You don't even have a place to stay? And I go, no, I don't have a place to stay. I'm going to make it work. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll sleep on someone's couch. I just know I got to get to the gym. I got to secure my job as a personal trainer. And that's all I'm focused on. And he told me that his dad actually rented rooms out to college kids and that he had a bunch of open rooms. He might be able to get me one. So we land in Santa Barbara. We go right to the gym. I talk to the gym owner and tell him that I'm a felon. I just got out of prison, but I'm motivated to help people. I've changed my life. I want a second chance. Like, give me that second chance. And he knew that I was being genuine. He felt that I was authentic and he saw that I was motivated, man. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to give you a shot, Sean. So you could be here working at the gym. You don't have to tell everyone what you've gone through, but I'm not going to we're not going to shy away from it. You got a shot. And so then the next step was going with my friend Nick to his dad's house, and he had a room for rent, and I gave him all that money. The rent was $700 a month. I think I gave him seven out of the $800, and now I had a room for rent and that job. And then the third piece I needed though was the transportation. I had no car, and I knew my uncle's mechanic from way back in the day. He was in town, and I went over to his spot, and he had all these cars that were kind of beat up that he was fixing up, but he wanted like 2,500 or 1,500 or three grand for them, and I had no money. And then he had this old Honda Civic that was completely obliterated. Like, I could not believe this car ran. The whole rear end was smashed in. It didn't even have a trunk, and it was just beat to shit. And he was willing to let me borrow it for 2 weeks and then give it back to him until I could save some money and maybe buy one of the other cars. So I took it. And then that next day, like, I had everything, right? I had the place to stay that night. I got up in the morning, drove that car to the gym, and I parked it away from the gym so nobody could see it. I parked it around the corner, and I was training my first client, man. I was training my first client at 5 in the morning. And it was so surreal because my first client was a bailiff and a sheriff at the Santa Barbara County Sheriff. And I didn't know that he knew me. When he saw me, he knew exactly who I was. And I didn't know for the first couple months that he was in law enforcement. But he and I actually developed a really good relationship. He became one of my best in person clients, and I helped him lose like 50 pounds. But from then on, man, I never looked back. Every day I was in the gym helping people, working with people. All the while, I knew that was temporary. I knew I wasn't an employee. I knew I wanted my own company, and I knew my coaching program was going to be bigger than just in the gym fitness. So one thing I've always done is I'm always very honest with myself about what that vision is that I'm cultivating and what I'm drawn to or who I want to be. And I've gotten really good at leaning into the growth required to become that person who could manifest those outcomes. I've done that ever since I came home. So, like 6 months after I was working in that gym, I left to start my own fitness company. And then I had clients all over, and I knew that I was going to grow that company big enough to where I was making some money and then eventually transition online where I could reach more people and, make a bigger impact. And so that process got expedited when COVID shut everything down. COVID shut the gyms down. I lost all my clients, all my revenue overnight. And at this time, I had my now wife, Jessica, my oldest son, Mason, who's 10, Scarlett, who was a newborn, and then Preston was literally in my wife's belly at the time. And I lost everything. I had no money, no way to take care of my family. And it was one of those moments where I was at a crossroads. Like, am I really the guy that I say? Like, just like you asked me earlier about the guys in prison, how committed am I really? Am I easily dissuaded and influenced by difficult circumstances or people? If I was a weaker individual, I would have let people in prison persuade me to get high again, persuade me to get involved in that bullshit, right? If I was a weaker individual and I hadn't just spent 2,000 days in prison doing the right thing, maybe when COVID happened, I would have broke. Maybe I would have called my uncle back up and asked for my old job back just to, protect me and my family or to feel safe. And that's honestly, if I was weaker, I would have done that. But I was so hell bent on cultivating this vision and doing what I'd set out to do. I was as close as possible to breaking that I could have been because I had my family and it wasn't just me. But I didn't, man. I didn't. I just said, you know what? I'm going to go all in and I'm going to share my message online. I'm going to write my book and I'm going to manifest. I'm going to force this outcome to take place. And I did. And I wrote my book during COVID and it became a bestseller. I started sharing my story on social media, predominantly Facebook, and I started getting a lot of attention and I started coaching a lot of guys. And that's when I started my online program and it just took off and I never looked back.
So you basically you built up this entire business just from essentially from your computer, with the coaching, via Zoom probably, I imagine during COVID, writing the book, building out the program, sharing your message on social media. I guess what advice do you have for growing a following on social media or, just, from behind a computer? Like what steps can a business owner take in the moving industry to share their messages?
Yeah, so specifically for the moving industry, like document what you're doing and don't just document the job, but document who you are. Like people follow and buy from individuals they know, like, and trust, right? So you want your content to be constant, meaning post reels, post on your story every day, but make them entertaining and engaging and like show your work, but also show your personality and who you are. Social media is like the new reality TV. People watch stuff that's sensational, that's attractive, that's intriguing. So that's partially why I was able to be successful online, is because my story, and I knew that, and I leveraged the prison story. I tell people how I changed my life in prison, how I was facing life in prison. They want to know. They're like, damn, what the heck did this guy go through? Then it allows me to teach them the things that I changed in my life that I know will help them. But if I was just posting about mindset and habits every day, not as many people would have been drawn and attracted to my social media presence. But it was because I shared about prison, I shared about addiction, I show my family, I show everything that I'm doing. So I treat my life like it's a reality TV show. But I'm also really authentic. I'm not fake. I'm not going to put up content just for likes and views. I'm only putting real shit out there because I want people to really connect with who I am. So, whether it's somebody in your industry or just people in general, the first thing you need to do is identify, like, who are you talking to when you pick up your phone? Like, who is that person you're talking to when you're sharing a message online? And then from there, what platforms are they on more? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Do you need to have a YouTube channel? Like, identify what is the best platform to start on, and then just be consistent and start filming and start getting on camera, and you'll get better and better over time. But make sure you're always talking to that individual, right? And you're talking to maybe their pain points, their challenges, or showing the results that you have that make you attractive. But make sure you know who you're talking to and that you're speaking to them every day and you're documenting your life and what you're doing. And they'll start to follow you more and more.
And so, how long did it take to get that traction to start to grow a following?
I mean, at first it was just a Facebook group, and I was coaching guys and making, multiple six figures coaching just off the people in my Facebook group. I hadn't even really gone on Instagram. Like 3, 4 years ago, I wasn't even really on Instagram. I was using Facebook. And then after the book and then COVID, and I was running the Facebook group, I started transitioning slowly on to Instagram. And my vision was that I wanted to grow my Instagram, but also use that demographic to help me land some speaking engagements. Because I really wanted to speak on stage. I felt I could just change people's lives from stage and share a captivating message. So I started going on Instagram slowly but surely. That following started growing. To be honest with you, though, it wasn't until the beginning of 2023, like January, I hired a media team. I had a lot of clarity as to how I was going to show up online, and I had worked with mentors. I had taken enough action to where I felt like I put all the pieces together to really create a powerful movement and message and get amazing results. And that's when I rebranded. I went from just Sean Crane coaching to the Unstoppable 365 MFR program. That's only a year old. And I have my head coach, Matt Fleming. I have my media team. I have an operations manager. So I hired some additional pieces. And so this year, I mean, we've been able to do a lot of cool things, help hundreds of guys all throughout the country. I've been able to speak on a lot of the big stages that allow me to share my message and promote the brand. And so that's the same trajectory that I want to be on going into 2024, and continuing to leverage my relationships with people, stages, and my story to build the brand and to get the message to the whole world.
Yeah, well, you've definitely got a lot of momentum. I think I probably found you earlier this year. So, they say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success sometimes, and your 10 years or 15 or however many it was amazing. And that for just this year, for all of this traction to start coming. When was the book released? Is that relatively new as well?
No, that was so I got two out right now. This other one I haven't really promoted too much. Prison of Your Own came out in 2021. This one's available all over Amazon. You can find it. The other book, this is a journal and self mastery guide, and I'm going to start promoting it more. Sorry. Initially, I made this for coaching clients. It's basically a mini course and a daily journal that shows people how to journal in the morning and the evening. The same process that I started doing in prison. and the same process I teach. So this is available on Amazon too. But this one came out at the beginning of 2023, and Prison of Your Own, my memoir, came out at the beginning of 2021.
So there's a lot of people I talk to that are writing a book or they're thinking about writing a book. I guess what advice do you have for somebody that wants to write a book, and what has writing a book done for you?
Yeah, so it depends. Are you writing a book based on your thoughts and ideas and you want it to be like conceptual, or is it based on your life events? Like writing my memoir was easy because it was just documenting what I had been through. I worked with an editor. I wrote the whole book, no ghostwriters, none of that. I wrote the whole book. I worked with an editor, and then I self-published through Amazon. So it wasn't that difficult. It was an 8-month process from the very beginning till the book was on Amazon. And what it's done is it's gave me more credibility. It's a piece, it's leverage, because now you have a book, you're an author, you're looked at, you're more esteemed in the eyes of your audience. You know what I mean? Like the more value that you put out in the world, the more that your value rises in the eyes of your audience. And not just that, but it can lead to more customers or clients, speaking opportunities. Like my first speaking opportunity came from a guy who saw my book on Amazon, and he read it and he liked it, and he shot me a message on Instagram to do his podcast. And I did his podcast with him. And then at the end of the podcast, he's like, "Man, I'm hosting a business slash personal development speaking conference in Arlington, Texas. I'd love to have you speak." So that was my first speaking engagement. I ended up flying out there. And the funniest thing was, right when I saw him, there was 2 stages, and he had me on the small stage. I'm like, "Bro, you got me on the small stage. What's up, man? Put me on the big stage, you know?" And he's like laughing. He's like, "Oh, we got so many speakers. I just met you. It's just the way it worked out." And I kept telling him that whole weekend, "Put me on the big stage, put me on the big stage." And then the day before the event went live, the main speaker, the keynote speaker's wife fell and hit her head, and she was in the hospital. So he canceled last minute. He couldn't come out. And so Donnie goes, "Bro, we're pulling a big move. Sean, you ready for this?" I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Well, so and so can't make it out. We're moving you to the big stage, and you're the last speaker of the event. You're giving the keynote. Can you handle that?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" Right? So I always put it out there, like what I want. I'm not scared to voice my opinion or the things I'm going after. So many people want to be best-selling authors. They want to be speakers. They want to be successful, but they're like scared to talk about it. Like put that out into the universe, put it out into the world, let people know what you're going to do, like why you're doing it, and be articulate with your message, but don't be scared to tell people what you want. And so that was awesome because that gave me my first opportunity, and from there I never looked back.
Ask and you shall receive. It's that law of attraction, and you were persistent and you were in the right place at the right time, and it just happened to, you saw an opportunity. I always think back to that. I don't know if you ever saw that movie Sandlot, where Babe Ruth walks in and Benny the Jet's room, and he says, most people go through life and they're given one opportunity. Most people don't ever take it because they're too scared, or they don't even recognize it if it bit them on the foot. Take that opportunity. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did in that situation. And so did it just start to springboard from there? Do you still get a lot of just random inquiries and opportunities from people that see the book? Or is it just kind of like, did somebody see you speak and then invite you to another opportunity? Like, I'm curious on that journey too.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Honestly, it's really about relationships. So cultivating relationships with the right people. Like last year, Victor Rancor and I crossed paths, and we were working together on some stuff some personal stuff I was coaching him on, and we built a really just great relationship. Like we're friends, and I would go down and speak at some of his smaller events with his employees, and then his network. And so like that's how I got to speak at Profit Rocket. Same with the Create conferences that I spoke at. I spoke at 2 conferences by Ken Jocelyn this year. The same thing, just through social media networking, kind of putting it out there. And then again with Tommy, Tommy and I just building a relationship, and just always showing people the value that I can share to their audience, whether it's through in-person conversations or like on social media. It takes a while to really become undeniable in people's eyes. And then when you do get that opportunity, you got to deliver, right? So for me, like I'm always practicing on my speaking skills. I'm always working on my craft. I'm always working on my content on social media and just doing podcasts. So the more my message is getting out of the world, the more people are hearing it. Then when there is a speaking engagement, like who are they going to think about? If someone says, "Hey, do you know a good speaker? Like I need somebody." you know somebody this weekend that can come out? Who are they going to think of, right? I want them to think of me. So it's positioning myself on social media and building these relationships long term that lead to those opportunities. And then sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, dude, your next speaking engagement, I'm on your stage. I don't care what I got to do or what needs to happen. You're putting me on your stage. I want to be there. I promise you, I'm going to light a fire under your audience's ass and you won't regret it. And like, that's kind of what I did with Tommy, dude. I texted him. I said, I'm going to bring the fire. Put me on that stage. And we had talked a little bit. We already had a relationship, but it was that straightforward, honestly.
So cool, man. I hope to get you out on our stage in March. It's going to be the biggest moving industry event of the year and possibly ever. There's not a lot of moving industry specific conferences, and we've been doing the Moving Titan retreats. It started in an Airbnb about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. And we just did our most recent one at the Grand Hyatt here in Tampa, and we're doing it at the JW Marriott in Tampa, March 2024. So I'll send you some more information when we get off the podcast. If you can make that, if you can swing that one, love to have you out. We've got Andy coming out. We're trying to get Tommy. He thinks he can swing it, hasn't confirmed it yet. So we're trying to build out a powerful lineup, and I think you'd be a great fit to it if it's something that we can make happen. So we'll go back and forth when we get off here about a possibility there. But that's so cool, man. I love hearing the journeys. You know, you've got like it's like the before and after, almost like two totally different journeys, equally as powerful. And it's really exciting to see people that are just on the come up, just making these connections. I think you said some really valuable things right there about just cultivating those relationships. You know, that seems to be this like recurring theme right now in my local community, but also in a lot of the stuff that we do with the podcast and the retreats, and starting to build a lot, starting to like wake up and like lights come on, like, oh wow, like all you have to do is create some value for somebody else and just ask sometimes, and doors open up. It's crazy how sometimes that works.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to put it out there, man, and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hear like what is Unstoppable 365?
Yeah. So the Unstoppable 365 program is focused on helping guys really just elevate who they are entirely, right? So we use mindset strategies, fitness, nutrition, and then having a tribe of other men striving to be successful and being around them. Like, iron sharpens iron, right? So it's a community. And a lot of these guys are in the trades, they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs. And a lot of times, if they have families as well, they put themselves on the back burner. So they gain weight. Maybe they're drinking too much. Maybe they don't feel as purpose driven as they did when they were younger. And they don't like that, right? They want to feel like they're on fire. So I have an app, and all the guys in my community have access to the app, and we structure their daily workouts based on their goals, their body type, everything they need. We teach them about nutrition and what foods to eat that are going to help them achieve their goals. And then we have a mindset course they go through that helps them to create shifts in their self-talk, cultivate, a vision of who they really want to be, and just really get dialed in on their mindset and daily habits. And the coolest thing is, I mean, we have hundreds of guys from all over the country who represent different companies, different states, different trades, but we all come together because we share common goals to be our best. We want to be the best husbands, the best business owners, and the best versions of ourselves. And when you're around a bunch of guys like that, it's really a lot easier to stay motivated and consistent. And so if there's anybody listening to this that knows they need to make a change and you need that fire lit under your ass, you need that accountability and support, that's what we do.
Love it. Love it. And so, healthy body, healthy mind. I'm a big proponent in that. We've been doing a lot of fitness stuff recently, well, over the last several months, really, inside of our own company, especially with our sales teams. Obviously, moving is pretty physical by nature for the operations side of the business. But tell me, like, how does being in such good shape, working out every single day, how does that translate into business? And I guess answer that question first, and I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I love this because a lot of business owners and people can't understand how fitness is such a vital component to creating success. But when you're working out and taking care of your body, the result is that you feel better about yourself. So you're going to have more confidence, you have more self-love and pride in who you are, right? And you develop discipline over time. All of those attributes are essential to creating success in other areas of your life. And so if you're in sales or you're leading a team or you're talking to customers, what you have to understand is you're putting off an energy, right? They're picking up on your energy. Are you the guy that's hungover, the guy who's fat and lazy and out of shape? Or are you the guy that's been working out, taking care of himself, and really seeing the value that he can give to others by the way he takes care of himself? Like, people are going to receive you as you are. So you have to recognize that when you walk into a room, are you going to automatically like inspire them? And are you going to look like someone who they want to do business with? Or are you coming in kind of sluggish? Your energy's low, your tonality is not where it needs to be. Like, it's all these subtle cues that we pass on in conversations to other people that really lead to them either wanting to work with us or believing in us, or them not. Right. So I know that the guy who's physically fit, who's eating good food that keeps him lean, that gives him energy and mental clarity, that guy's showing up with a better energy for his family. That guy's showing up with a better energy for his team. That guy's going to be more inspirational, more influential. Like, he's going to serve his customers better, because if he's taking care of himself to that degree, imagine what he's going to do for the people around him.
Yeah, whenever I'm working with a vendor or going into business with somebody, that's something I've started to really pay attention to. Is this person that I'm about to, pay a bunch of money to do whatever it is? It could be digital marketing, it could be buying insurance from, whatever the case is, are they taking care of themselves? Or is it just some, slow, lazy, non-motivated, overweight person? I've really started to pick up that I want to do business not only with the people that I hire and bring into my own company, but the people that I'm relying on for outside services, I want them to be ambitious. I want them to be taking care of themselves and to have high energy, because I've had so many experiences now. I mean, I've been in business now for over 11 years that you just notice that. You notice a difference, that people will go above and beyond for you when they have the energy to do it. And if they're not healthy, if they're out of shape, if they're fat, they don't have the energy to go above and beyond for you, because they can't even do it for themselves or their own families, and they're probably miserable, and it's this self-fulfilling prophecy within their own lives. So how can they make my life better if they can't even make their own life better? I've really started to realize that. And for anybody listening, where do you get started? I mean, I'm sure there's people that are just ingrained in bad habits, that they grew up, parents probably didn't set a great example, or maybe they did and they fell off somewhere along the line, and now they're just kind of stuck in the grind, and they're in the routine and in the habit of being unhealthy, but they want to change. They see the upside to changing their physical stature. How can somebody start, and then what's the best program to follow, basically, to just optimize their performance in business and the rest of their life?
Yeah, so the first step, you got to be honest with yourself, man. If you look in the mirror and you're fat and out of shape, and you know that you're not at your best, like, you got to be honest with yourself, because denial is going to lead to a life of regret later on. Like, if you're in denial now and you don't change now, on your deathbed, you're going to see the truth, and you're going to wish you changed a lot sooner. And not just that, but how's it affecting your family? How's it affecting your kids? How's it affecting your business? You have to see the impact that you're having in these people's lives, and find something that's deeper and more meaningful, oftentimes, to motivate action. If it's just to go to the gym to lose weight, for some people, that's not enough. But if you're a piece of shit dad, or if you're not going to be around to see your grandkids grow older, or you're not going to be around to walk your daughter down the aisle, then you'll change, right? So what is at stake if you don't change? That's what I always ask guys initially, because I want to tap into some emotion that we can use as a catalyst for positive action. Then from there, you're going to need a plan to follow, right? So what time you waking up in the morning, what time you going to the gym, what workout are you doing? You got to get it done first, because otherwise it won't get done, because we're busy and stuff comes up. And when you work out first, you get more clarity, right? You dust the cobwebs off, you cultivate some energy, you go into your day on fire. When you go to the gym and crush your workout, you feel good about that. And you start to transfer that energy and that feeling inside of you to everyone you come into contact with. So you're going to be happier around your wife and kids. You're going to be happier, more energized in your business throughout the day. It's just the way it needs to be done. Then you need to track your calories. You need to know how much calories, proteins, fats, and carbs you should be eating to lose weight, build muscle, or just to self-optimize. If you're just eating random foods and you don't know what you're putting in your body, that's ignorant, okay? The food you're putting in your body has an effect on your mental health, on your weight, on everything, okay? So make sure you know what you're putting in your body and how much of it you need to be eating. And then the last component is accountability and support. If you have people that'll go to the gym with you, great. I've heard some guys like say that, oh, my wife's going to hold me accountable, or I got some buddies. Typically that doesn't work. Okay, you need like a real serious group of individuals or a mentor or a coach, like what I represent. The guys that come into my program, we don't let them make excuses. We hold a high standard because we want them to be their best, right? We're not just yelling at them and being drill sergeants, but we're reminding them, hey, this is what you said's at stake if you don't change. Hey, this is who you said you want to be. And it's that constant awareness over time that helps them to make a shift in how they're living. Then when they're seeing all these other guys that are in the trades or running businesses or family men's making those changes too, the belief that they start to develop in themselves is like, man, if they're doing it, I can do it. So I mean, my coaching program is only $297 a month, and we give them everything they need: the blueprint, the daily support, the accountability, everything that they need. And honestly, I know guys who spend more than that on drinks on a Friday night or some dinner that they don't need on the weekends. It's a small investment for what's to gain. So if someone wants to join with us, I'd love to support you. Shoot me a message, Sean M. Crane on Instagram, or find yourself another coach or support system. Like, it doesn't have to be me, but you need to get around people who have the results that you want, who can guide you to that result that you want. And I'm telling you, immerse yourself in that environment and it'll save and change your life for the better.
Sean, this is awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to talk to me. I'm fired up right now, and you truly do have an amazing story, and I can tell you are sharp. You're sharp as a saw right now, and you've got a lot of momentum, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I look forward to staying in touch. I'm going to be sending you more information about the Moving Titan Retreat that's coming up next year. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. If you would like to learn more about any of the sponsors listed on this show, want to apply for the next Moving Titan Retreat, or interested in owning or working for Two College Brothers franchise, drop me a line at wade@twocollegebrothers.com. Moving out. Have a great day.